This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Hello and welcome to Six Tackles with Gus, the morning after one of the greatest State of Origin games ever played. Queensland 22, New South Wales 12. The Maroons, written off after a drubbing in Perth, have secured yet another Origin Series victory on a night to savour at Suncorp Stadium.
As Ben Hunt goes to Dearden, NRL paging Valentine Holmes. Tom Dearden, the 21-year-old on debut, has put the Queensland centre Valentine Holmes over. Coruscant for Nathan Cleary, a kick through the line. They're coming from everywhere. It's Jerome Luai, who scores for the second time in Origin.
Well, he stumbled, but I think he got there, Jerome Luai.
He's put down centre field on the 10. Is something cooking here? You bet it is! Jacob Saifidi scores the try for New South Wales. His brother scored one in last year's series, and now he's on the try-scoring sheets.
Oh, what a start for Saifidi, Jacob Saifidi.
15 seconds until half-time, probably two plays. Grant dinks it through. Capel in a running. Oh, Capel's beaten them all. He might have saved the game for New South Wales. It's still on for Queensland, though. Ponga through. Come on! The magic man from Newcastle. He has threatened with every touch of the ball, and he's put his state ahead. Now Cleary. Oh, that's been pitched by Ben Hunt. And racing away upfield. Ben Hunt. He goes for the corner. Wins the Origin for Queensland.
Could we have asked for any more? What a game. Hello, Phil Gould.
Hi, Matthew. How you doing?
I'm a bit scratchy in the throat.
Oh, I can understand that.
A few people are saying it's the greatest Origin ever. Now, I know you're not one to jump into those emotional statements, but I don't know that we've seen too many more dramatic Origin games than that.
I've heard that statement a number of times down through the decades, and we tend to remember the one most recent in our mind, but there was no better theatre than what we witnessed last night. It was the greatest theatre our game has to offer. An Origin decider at that venue, in front of that crowd, and the players giving so much of themselves. I've spoken a number of times over the years when we talk about Origin about the commitment of players and the courage with which they play, and how that this is a test of everything they've ever trained for and lived for and desired for. It's a test of mind, body and soul. And every player who took part last night just gave 100% of themselves. And, for us, it's entertainment. For them, it's everything they've ever wanted to do. It's everything they've been trained to do. And, they pretty much all delivered. It was a pressure cooker situation. It brought out the best and worst in a lot of players, but that's what the environment is meant to do. That's what that particular game and that environment is meant to do. I've said many times that Origin in Queensland is different to anywhere else, and particularly a decider in Queensland is extremely different to anywhere else. It's an experience that both sets of players and both coaches will remember forever. But to see it play out for us as entertainment, to the fans, and it was an extraordinary experience. And Queensland thoroughly deserved their victory. It got down to the last 40 minutes of the series. With New South Wales leading 12-10 at half-time. The series was on the line over the last 40 minutes, and Queensland's last 40 minutes of the series was their best, and they deserved the win. They could have easily scored another 3 or 4 tries. I think they had 6 or 7 disallowed during the course of the game. They applied a lot of pressure to New South Wales. It's different. It's a different sort of football. It's a different sort of game. And it's something that, until you've actually gone through it, it's hard to explain to people what you're about to undergo. I said a number of times in the lead up to that third game that you really had to respect Queensland's record in deciders, particularly in Brisbane, where they've now won 10.5 out of the 14 that have been played up there. So 14 Origin deciders played in Queensland, 10.5 have gone to Queensland. And it's mainly because of the type of game it becomes. In Origin 1 down here in Sydney, I said Queensland got the type of game they wanted, a close-fought, grinding effort, and New South Wales were found a little bit wanting in different parts of the game. Game 2 was the game that New South Wales wanted. It was a little more open. They got to use their freedom in attack, and they ran up a nice score. And it was who would get their game in Queensland. And New South Wales knew what sort of game they wanted. Queensland knew what sort of game they wanted. The test comes when you don't get the game you want. It's all right to go in with a strategy and a plan and thinking, well, this is the way we need to play it, and we can't let our opposition get what they want. But in games like this, where the result is carved on a shield for all eternity, it's like grand finals where there's no tomorrow. In club games and other games, you can come back and get it right next time. But where you have to get it right on the night, where that W means something, where the result actually means something, it's going to be carved on a shield forever. You have to be prepared for whatever comes your way, for whatever style of game that it's going to be. And sometimes you have to win when it doesn't go your way. That's the battle of state of origin. That's the battle of deciders. That's the mental preparation that you have to make, that you don't get the game you want, you don't get the possession you want, but can we win anyway? It's easy during the year, just in a week in, week out, to say, we didn't have enough ball, or the referee didn't go our way, or a couple of decisions, or a couple of lucky bounces. No one cares about that this morning. No one cares about that. All that will be recorded in history is who won, and that was Queensland. And that's why it's a different mindset. It's a different mentality when you go into games where this result will be recorded forever. That you only get one shot. There's no coming back to get it right next week. And
are you trying to draw a point there about New South Wales' performance?
No, I think I definitely think that second half in particular was not anything like what they have experienced before.
Yeah.
For a lot of those young players, it's hard to prepare them for it, but that's where you need to get yourself mentally and understand that as a group you've got to collectively come together to fight in those moments. And the pressure that Queensland were able to apply. And it's totally different to your club football. They've never been in environments like that where defences have been able to get at them as quickly as they did and to put as much pressure on as they did and be constantly getting the ball on their own goal line and trying to come off the line running into 3, 4, 5 defenders. The exhaustion that you feel. And it's hard to get in position and find a pass to get the ball a little bit away from the ruck rather than just being gang tackled by 3 and 4, raging Queenslanders that they come to. And eventually got the better of them. Talakai come up with a fumble. Crichton tried to get an offload because he wasn't making enough ground. The ball went back into the in goal. There were just little moments in that second half where you could feel New South Wales thought, what the hell is this? And how do we get out of this? And really didn't come together in that time. And that's the pressure that Queensland applied. It's a game for older heads when it gets to that part of the series, and I think a lot of the young New South Wales players would have never experienced a game like that before in their life. They would never have experienced an atmosphere or the type of football that was played or the type of physical assault that they were subjected to. In the first half, after the little bit of carnage early, and
a little bit,
and Queensland got to the front. New South Wales actually dominated the last 20 minutes of the first half. Yep. Could have led by a lot more, but there was a feeling there that Queensland were just hanging on, and New South Wales, if they get more ball. And then that try before halftime was crucial for Queensland, absolutely crucial. And the halftime break was crucial for Queensland. And it was a totally different game in the second half. New South Wales never got in it. The last 40 minutes of the series needs to be your best. In Game 3, you need to be at your best. And the last 40 minutes in particular where the series is to be decided, you need to be at your best. That's where it all comes together, and Queensland did it. And it came on the back of experience of blokes that have been there and failed before. Your Daly Terry Evanses and your Ben Hunts and these fellas they've felt the worst of it. They've been through what a lot of those young New South Wales players went through last night. They've learned to live the tale, and they've come out the other side and look at the players they are today. And
how good were they? I'm so glad you pinpointed those two. They were superb. Jerry
absolutely. New South Wales had superb players too, but it's a game that you keep learning every time you go out to play one. It's never like the one before, and it's and particularly in that environment, very, very few of those New South Wales players have been in that environment and subjected to that sort of intense pressure from both their opposition and the crowd, and the referee rightly kept out of it for as much as he could and just allowed the two teams together, because that's the true test. That's what Origin football is. That's the true test. We saw the physicality early and what that caused, and 3 players, knocked themselves out. Now, let me point out that all 3 players were making tackles, not getting tackles. This is because of tackle technique and the rules and the laws that we've had and how it's going to... And it's hard to be overly aggressive and overly physical in that environment like it is with the modern-day tackling techniques that we have, and that's why we saw that carnage early in the game. The blokes that knocked themselves out were making tackles and trying to make legal tackles under the current rules, and they're just so big and strong, these fellas, that they got their heads in the wrong place and they didn't see much of the game. But the...
Just on that too, so Billy's in his first series as Queensland coach, and he's in this extraordinary environment that he found himself last night, and he loses Selwyn Cobbo in the 2nd minute, and he loses Lindsay Collins in the 4th minute.
Yep.
What's Billy thinking?
Well,
what's? I mean,
but you prepare for that. If you're not prepared for that, then you're in the right. And he was prepared for it. I've said many times, like people ask me about picking, Origin teams. Now, I picked my bench first, and my bench all had to be 80-minute players, not bench players, not blokes that were good at coming off the bench or good in short spurts, in their first grade. They had to be blokes that if you had to call on them after 1 minute to play the next 79 minutes, they could go out and do it. And that's what an Origin player is. That's what an Origin player should be. It's not about replacements in, very little of your Origin replacement things should be about strategy. It's about exhaustion or injury. That's what you've got to cover. And if you get it in the first couple of minutes, and New South Wales did, Cameron Murray would have been a big part of their game last night, but he was gone, after a minute. And they're the thunderbolts that this game will throw at you. And you look at young Cobbo, and it's very, very unfortunate for him. But what it did, it put Kurt Capewell to centre, put Gagai to wing, two very, very experienced players. Capewell has played with Luai and Burton and those fellas at club level. And there were a couple of crucial times in the first half there where Capewell and Gagai come up with big plays, big defensive plays on their own goal line. Their experience was able to cut down New South Wales. Now, had Cobbo been on the wing, they targeted him in the first couple of games and got a couple of tries. So, it's unfortunate for Cobbo, but the way it worked out, Capewell and Gagai did such a great job on Luai and Burton and that left-hand side attack. New South Wales, were thwarted a couple of times in defensively. And the rest of it is, you've just got to aim up and do it. They've all got to be 80-minute players. They've all got to be prepared to go the distance. Strategy goes out the window. It's like that old saying, the fighter's saying, like everyone gets into the ring with a plan until they get hit on the chin. And the plan goes out the window. Well, that's what happens in Origin. Plan goes out the window. You've got to plan for the unexpected. You've got to be mentally and physically ready for whatever it throws at you, because quite often it won't throw what you want. Sometimes it does, and you get the run of the green and everything goes good. It goes terrific. But most of the time it doesn't. And particularly in that environment, New South Wales players experienced, the toughest test that our game has to offer. And it's the greatest theatre that our game can offer. In that environment, at that ground, with so much at stake, and for the players to thoroughly commit themselves 100% to everything that they did. There were some brave efforts from New South Wales and some obviously courageous efforts from Queensland. And, we talk about the build-up and players being out. And I said, forget about Munster. He's not there. Watch Dearden. You worry about the players that are coming in. You worry about what their skill factor is. And
what a debut.
What you've got to remember is that young Dearden, that's all he's ever dreamt of doing. From the time he recognised what rugby league was and he wanted to be a rugby league player as a young Queenslander, that's the game he's always wanted to play in. So there was no fear or hesitation from him. This is what I've always wanted to do. So you've got to respect that. And it's, I always say when people lose key players and that, forget about who's out, worry about who's come in.
Yeah.
And the players that come in really cover themselves with glory. And particularly from the Queensland sense, this is all they've ever wanted to do. That's the game they've always ever wanted to play in. So you've got to respect that. You've got to respect their record on that ground when, everything is at stake when we get down to a decider.
I'm glad you bring that up. I wanted to put that one to you. Queensland have over the decades, and again with Billy, they have picked players, and they haven't hesitated. So when the COVID situation hit, Billy said Dearden's in, Gilbert's in, and Gilbert was selected earlier obviously to make his debut as a replacement, but Dearden coming in to replace Munster. Those two first gamers had the full backing of the Queensland support staff, and they come out in their first games and they have absolute blinders for their state. Like they do it time and time again, don't they?
Absolutely. And if they pick them next time and the game is in Sydney on a cold, wet night and slippery surface, well, they're going to get a different experience again. And you know, that was perfect for them. No better game to bring them in. And talk about the Queenslander and pass down from player to player, generation to generation, team to team. You know, that origin mentality and that origin spirit, and the reason why they play the game and what they believe. I mean, that's 6 weeks of the year, Queensland goes into a trance, mate. I'm telling you, they go into a trance. And I know, I've got good friends who are Queenslanders I can't talk to for 6 weeks. They go into a trance. This is everything they've ever wanted. They believe in it, and it's something that New South Wales has to contend with. When it doesn't contend with it, you can't beat them.
So you talk about the second half, Gus. The one thing that stood out calling the game last night, New South Wales couldn't get a crack at Queensland's line. What about the early kicks? Like tackle 2 kicks, tackle 3 kicks. Ben Hunt nails a 40-20.
Is it not my favourite saying?
Yeah.
The early kick. I love the early kick. Early kicks change games. They change momentum. They really do. And that was the experience of both Cherry Evans and Hunt, to know that it was better to kick the ball and chase it and play without it. I call it winning without the ball. Can we win without the ball? And winning without the ball means you are willing to give it to the opposition and defend your way to victory. And if you don't get the possession you want, you still need to find a way to win. And New South Wales nearly did. Don't get me wrong. Take away the Cleary chip kick, Ben Hunt intercepts and runs the length of the field, which exacerbates the issue. But New South Wales had defended their line virtually the whole second half.
Yeah, they did.
They had saved try after try after try after try. Queensland had disallowed tries, but there were New South Wales players there running interference and getting in the way and holding people up. They had bravely defended their line. They didn't play well. They turned the ball over. They kept giving Queensland opportunities, but they kept aiming up and they were still in the game. You know, it's 16-12. They're still in the game.
Yeah.
And finally, in the last minutes, they come down, maybe with a chance to do a Queensland on Queensland. Maybe to do a chance with... So they gave themselves a chance to pull it out of the fire. Now, Cleary, you know, he comes up with a chip kick, and all we'll remember is Ben Hunt running the other way. The chip kick goes a foot higher and lands right, and he regathers and scores a try or passes to someone who scores a try. It's his great moment. His great moment will come.
Well, he had to try.
He's great, mate. Ben Hunt's had his disappointments.
Yeah.
Ben Hunt's had his big moments where it wasn't quite right. Cherry Evans has had his big moments where it didn't quite work for them. But you keep coming back. You learn from it. Failure is a part of your development. You know, losing is a part of your development. It's
Ben Hunt dropped the ball in the grand final. Poor bloke.
Well, he's been through a number of ones. You know, he's been in and out of that side. But it's, you know, and that was Ben Hunt's moment. But New South Wales actually gave themselves a chance to win, even though they hadn't had the ball or the field position. They defended bravely. They thwarted a number of attacking opportunities. They saved a number of tries. They did everything they could under the circumstances, you know, and they weren't playing well. They were totally besotted by this Queensland avalanche that was coming at them. But they still found a way to come down with a couple of minutes to go and be a chance of scoring the try to go ahead and win the game. And that's got great character and courage in it too. Now, the game-winning play, the one that, you know, well, here it is. That all comes down to this one play. Here it is. Last tackle, Cleary. Here it is. We're all watching. He chip kicks, doesn't quite come off his boot hard. Maybe there's a moment of hesitation. Maybe there's an element of self-doubt. Maybe, am I doing the right thing? And the kick doesn't quite come off the right. I don't know. You'll have to ask Nathan. But I can see exactly what's happening. And that was Hunt's bang. Big moment. So it could have easily gone the other way, and maybe next time it does. But you know, it's great experience for all those players that went through it, particularly for the New South Wales players. Like I said, even those debut players who went so well in Perth, I said, but they haven't played in Brisbane yet. You know, they haven't played a decider in Brisbane. It's a completely different animal, and they will have never experienced anything like they experienced last night. It'll be devastating for them this morning. And it's devastating for everyone involved with New South Wales when that happens. But you've got to value the experience it's given you. And the test now is to bounce back from that, to learn from it, to use it as motivation, and to come back again, which, you know, Queenslanders have done. There are New South Wales players that have done it throughout history. New South Wales has to do it now. But it was amazing theatre, wonderful theatre, and I think, highly entertaining for our game. It doesn't get any better.
On Origin nights, in our commentary box, a little insight, like we have a lot of people sort of come through the box and, some people that are executives and we have some sponsors and whatever. At one stage, I took a sip of water and turned around. I reckon there was about 30 people in the box and all of them were transfixed on the game. Like no one could look away. They were just like, what on earth is happening out there? I see Roy Masters in the paper today says that's the best Origin game he's ever seen. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that would probably rate it up there as well. I want to talk about the fullbacks. Now, Tedesco was mighty. Jeez, he's become a mighty leader, hasn't he? Kalen Ponga, man of the match, both the number ones. They were just remarkable performances.
I actually asked Darren Lockyer on the panel before the game because people talk about will the rookies handle the pressure and the decider and the new blokes in the team and all that sort of thing. And I asked Darren, I said, what about the leaders, the captains? When you came into a decider like this and you're playing in front of this crowd, how much responsibility did you feel for the result? And I'd said it pretty much at a number of the functions that I went to that Tedesco and Daly Cherry Evans would have leading hands in this result, in this game, and that the two captains would take it upon themselves. And Darren admitted that the pressure is enormous that you feel as the captain and the leader, that the result lies with you, and that the confidence and the development of the team and the direction of the team and keeping the team motivated throughout the 80 minutes is through your efforts. Not through telling them what to do or asking them to do something more. It's virtually through your efforts. And that's where we've seen the great Origin leaders over the years, over the decades that have inspired their teams. And James Tedesco couldn't have done any more to inspire his players. And Daly Cherry Evans the same. He was absolutely brilliant for Queensland. Kalen Ponga had his best game of rugby league I've ever seen him play. He was on our panel just after the game and I said that to him. I said, that was your greatest ever. And he said, I'm really proud of myself. And I said, you should be. He was brilliant, scored the match-winning try, of course, but was dangerous on all parts of the field, did some really brave stuff. And
looked like he was going to score every time he touched the ball, didn't he?
He was electric, he really was. And, and Queensland moved the ball a little bit better too. They were, and they had more opportunity in the second half. Honestly, in the first half, 10 minutes before half-time, I actually turned around to our boss, Brent Williams. I said, they're just holding on, Queensland.
It felt like that, didn't it?
You could feel it. They were just... But they've got the ability to do that, Queensland. They've always done it. They've got this ability to hold on. And they're never, ever intimidated by the way the game is going. On lesser players, that you can sort of feel, we're struggling here. We can't get out of our own half. Or, the opposition just looks a bit slick for us, and it sort of intimidates them. Queensland never get intimidated by the brilliance of New South Wales, or if New South Wales are going through a good period, they just hang in and wait for it to turn. And then lo and behold, a minute before half-time, they put up this terrible kick. And New South Wales wingers, Daniel Tupou, doesn't get a handle on. He was close to the sideline and watching where his foot was. And
that was weird, wasn't it?
Well, he probably should have been on the outside of the line and touching the ball to put it dead. He was probably on the wrong side of the ball. But anyway, that's what the pressure does, and it gave Queensland that one last shot. And virtually on the last play of the first half, Harry Grant gets out, does a pirouette,
beautiful
bit
kick,
of ballet, and then puts a kick in, which ricochets. And Luke Capewell, who's not even supposed to be playing in the centres, dives between people and gets the ball over the line, and that's what winners do. And he's been a proven winner. He's won a couple of comps. And
he's become a real big game player, Kurt Capewell, hasn't he? Well, bigger the occasion, the better he goes.
Yeah, there's players like that. The bigger the stage, the better the players you put them with, and the bigger the stage, they excel. And he's become a very reliable commodity.
Now let me continue this theme of big game players. Patrick Carrigan came into a Brisbane team that couldn't get out of their own way a few years ago. He was given the captaincy of that team, I reckon, after 12 games maybe, and Brisbane were hopeless. In his first Origin series, he has won the Wally Lewis medal as player of the series and was absolutely unbelievable. 180-something metres in game one. Only Queensland player to run for over 100 metres in game two when they were soundly beaten. And he started last night, earned his place in the starting team and did everything. What an effort. What an evolution.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about. Failure and adversity and difficult situations, where this game has a wonderful ability to make or break people. It will make you or it will break you. And there were enough excuses over the last few years with the Broncos for some of them young fellas to be broken by what they were going through. And, every player goes through it. Every player goes through a setback, an injury, a disappointment, a bad play, a bad game. And it can make or break you. And Patrick Carrigan, his character's been revealed, that he's been able to come through those losing times and that adversity and keep persevering and keep building his game and building his body and building his mentality to the point where you put him in, the ultimate test, and he just excels, and he excelled through this series. I don't want to detract anything from his award. There were a lot of great players throughout the series, and particularly for Queensland, and certainly Patrick was one of them. And it's a great credit to him to win that prestigious medal.
Gus, the Biff's back. Bring back the Biff. You don't think that's Biff, do you? You don't classify that as Biff, do you?
No.
It's not Biff where you come from.
No. It was a little bit out of the ordinary. It showed that they'd never done it before. So.
I tell you, your man at the Bulldogs, Matt Burton, he's a great player, but he can't fight.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can fight.
I reckon you could take Burton on.
Well, they had to get one bloke to hold him so the bloke could hit him. So
he got a fair old lump on his cheek.
Didn't hurt him. I noticed none of those blokes got hurt. It was none of the blokes making tackles got hurt.
Anything else you want to say about Origin? Look, my brain's still fogged after.
No, it's and that's it's another line in the sand moment. Queensland, all those great players, all those senior players that went through that enormous run with Queensland, all retired pretty much within 2 years. And since that time they've won 2 or 4 series with a new band of players coming through. And at times they've looked ordinary, but they keep being able to win the ones that count. They won that series with Wayne Bennett as coach, and no one expected them to win. And patched up a team and put it together, and you look at all the experience that come out of that side. But in some ways, the experience was put back in with the coaching team that they had. Those great players, Slater, Smith, Thurston, and everyone else that's been around the Queensland camp for so long, and Alfie Langers and all that sort of blokes. They're all. That's what I mean about Queensland. It's one long, continuous campaign.
Did you see the sheds after the game? Standing room only.
I didn't get to see the sheds. No.
The pictures of the sheds, they couldn't fit any more in.
Yeah, well, it's what Queensland do.
I've got another little insight for listeners and viewers of the podcast. So at the end there, when Ben Hunt scored, Cameron Smith, he forgot he was commentating. He threw his mic down and ran out. He ran out of the commentary box.
Yeah.
He ran out the back door. Cam, where are you going?
He was
he was trying to run down on the field to embrace him.
He was cheering the whole 80 metres.
I know. And then...
Sounded like he was on the last favourite at Randwick.
I know. So on one side, Cameron Smith's run out of the box, and on the other side of me, Andrew Johns has thrown his microphone across the commentary box.
Yeah.
You blokes forget what you're supposed to be doing up here. They're stark raving mad. Oh, Joey was very cranky after the game.
Think it went wrong for New South Wales
just
tonight.
those big moments.
Yeah.
Just the big moments. And now we have to listen to all the bullshit that just go on with the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Drives you mad.
Fuels the rivalry, though. It does.
Oh.
It was funny years ago when Andrew first started with us in commentary. We used to have the post-game panel, and it used to be Fatty and Wally from Queensland, and it used to be myself and Andrew from New South Wales, and we'd do a wrap-up of the game after the game. And it was during that period where Queensland were winning all the time, and Fatty's
relentless.
Fatty's a terrible loser and a worse winner. Yeah. Like he's just. So we go up to the commentary position, and they've beaten us again. It was another decider. They flogged us. They beat us by 40 or something or other, and we're sitting up there, and we're not on air yet, And Andrew's got his pad, and he's saying, get rid of him, we've got to get rid of him, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And, of course, Fatty's sitting up the other end of the thing there with the big head wobble. He says, well, why don't you coach him, Andrew?
Yeah.
And Andrew says, bloody oath, I'll bloody coach him. And I said, woo.
Pull him up.
I said, woo. I said, don't go saying that. I said, don't go saying that. I said, just don't say
did he?
Don't say that.
Yeah.
He said, all right. So 2 minutes later, we're on air. And the first thing Fatty says, well, Andrew, why don't you coach him? And Andrew says, no, I don't need that pressure in my life. I don't need that pressure in my life.
Lucky you were there. You would have had the gig otherwise.
Oh, no. I said, no, Be careful what you wish for there, baby.
Oh, could you imagine it? Like, I mean,
But Fatty used to rev him up.
Oh, no.
And Fatty's, and that's what he was, because
I
Fatty
remember
drives everyone mad when Queensland wins. He's just the way he just does it. He gets under your skin. I've learned to put up with it now. I was talking to him after the game last night. He was
he's the best.
very proud and very excited for that. And it was a big night for Queensland. Sitting there watching the players go around with the shield, and it's a great night for the game. Look, let me tell you this, and this is coming from a staunch New South Wales person, and it's never bad when Queensland wins. It's always good for our game when Queensland is doing well. And that's, as I sat there last night pre-match and just taking in that furnace atmosphere prior to kick-off and understanding what these players were about to go to. When I went down to interview Brad Fittler just before kick-off for Channel 9, when I walked into the dressing room, it was eerily quiet. Eerily quiet. And
What did that tell you?
Yeah, it was just, I even mentioned, I said, it's very quiet down here. And he said, yeah, and Brad was quiet. He was, it was obviously, there's a lot of pressure in that, and it comes up and grabs you by the throat, and it's a tough environment, and sometimes, and you've just got to be prepared for whatever comes your way. And but it was a great night for Queensland. It was a great night for rugby league, and trust me, it's never bad for rugby league when Queensland wins. Yeah. That's the battle. Origin is about Queensland, and it's about great theatre like that and great moments. Yeah. And Queensland, I've had so many text messages from former Queensland players saying, "Oh, that was our greatest ever win," and that. And good on you. They love it. It's everything they've lived for, and you've got to respect that. And the challenge is, well, to beat them next time. Yeah. That's what New South Wales has to do. Yeah. But I think a lot of them young blokes last night will have got an experience they couldn't. You can't buy that experience. No. You've got to go through it to understand it. Yeah. And if they're ever in that position again, they'll be better prepared.
Just the last one, I suppose, in Origin. He's got that youthful buzz about him, Brad Fittler, albeit someone who's 50 years old now. Do you know what? For the first time, I reckon he looked his age last night on the sideline. You've known him since he was, 15, 16?
Yeah, it's a high-pressure job. It really is. And it's beaten the best of them over the years. I mean, they'll all tell you what it does emotionally to you. And I talked to Wayne Bennett about it, years later after we'd sort of coached at that level. And the emotional drain that it takes on you. They say players have post-origin hangover. Coaches do too. It's totally absorbing. The whole build up to it, the pressure of it, the selections, the training, the strategy, the games themselves. It really does wear you out. I remember reading Wayne Bennett. We lost a series back in the 80s and walked the streets at night. That night, couldn't sleep and got up and walked the streets trying to work out what had gone wrong or, where his future lies and what, like you feel like the world's about to end. And I thought, geez, that's a bit extreme. And then some years later when Mark Coyne scored a try in the corner to beat us,
you found yourself walking
I found myself walking the streets at Penrith at 3 a.m. thinking, how the bloody hell did that happen and what's going to happen
as long as you weren't at Watson's Bay.
But it's totally absorbing. And I think, for Billy and Brad last night, and even watching them during the game, and a couple of times we crossed to them, and that you could see the intensity of it, and you sort of relive those feelings that you had, but it was visible for them. You could actually see it on their faces and see it in their actions, which is good. That's you're alive. You've got to live your life, and that's what they wanted. That's the environment they wanted to put themselves into. There can only be one winner. Billy will be on cloud 9 today, and Brad will feel like the world's come to an end. And but he's got to bounce out of that and go again. He's done a great job for New South Wales. He's brought on a lot of good young players, and it's still a young New South Wales side.
They didn't have Latrell or Turbo.
Yeah, but it's an Origin side. Queensland didn't have players either. I don't worry about who's available and not available. It's an Origin side. You're picking the best out of clubs. You've got everyone to pick from. You can't pick a bad side.
No.
New South Wales never went in with a bad side. We can all talk about now, well, maybe he should have been in, Tom or Bill or Fred or whatever. But at the end of the day, we picked a great side, and they played as hard and they gave as much as they could. It was just, that's an extraordinary test that Queensland decided. It's an extraordinary test, and it's, and they've only just come up short. As I said, it got down to the last minute. And there we are at the line, chip kicking and trying to win the game. Nathan Cleary was trying to win the game. It's as simple as that. There's that old saying by Michael Jordan, he failed 2,000 times. to get the success that he got. The number of times he was given the game-winning shot and failed, and he said that's what made him the player that he was. And it'll make Nathan Cleary. It's made Daly Cherry Evans. It's made Ben Hunt. You know, failure's a part of your journey. It's a rare beast that never loses.
To the 34 players who took the field last night, plus the 2 coaches and all the support staff, all we can do is say thanks, because you've given us one of the great sporting spectacles in Australian sports history, a game that will never be forgotten. Little break here on Six Tackles with Gus, and we'll have a quick look at the club round. So round 18 of the NRL. Now, how do any of these players back up from that? We need to just have a casual glance at all of this, because I don't think we really know who's going to play yet. But Friday night footy tomorrow, 6 p.m, Cowboys and Sharks. Now, I can't imagine any of those North Queensland players are going to back up.
I don't think they're planning to.
So a couple weren't named. Holmes wasn't named.
Yep.
Look, I haven't got it in front of me, but I can't.
Well, the Panthers have already selected their side without the rep players. They got the luxury of being, a mile in front in the premiership ladder, and those players are deserving of a rest. So
the Sharks are full strength up there.
Yeah, and obviously they had, assuming that everyone's recovered from their COVID and all that sort of thing as well. So, but yeah, Sharks. Look, I think Sharks will be hard to beat, mind you. The Cowboys are on a roll, and whether their rep players play or not, that momentum that they've got is good. Chad Townsend was a part of the Origin squad, but goes back, so he'll be itching for a game. I think Dearden will back up. I think he'll be on such a high.
Yeah.
He'll be on such a high, he'll go back and demand to play. Yeah. That'll be my read. Whether or not they play him or not, they're well placed on the ladder. They don't need to play him.
Well, he's been named, so...
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but I think Sharks will have had by far the better preparation and look a little bit more settled. And if Cowboys are going to lose one at home, this is one that they could lose. They've been exceptionally good there this year, and I think of the two teams, they're playing the better football. But right in this game at this moment, short turnaround, 6 o'clock Friday night, after all the euphoria of Origin and everything they've gone through, Sharks have gone up there early. I know they're up there preparing, getting ready for this game on Friday night. I think they'll see this as a... people have been talking about the Sharks draw and who they've been beating or what have you, but
they beat Melbourne last week.
Yeah, so they've sort of targeted this little period here where they're playing the top sides, and I think they'll be ready to go. I'm going to tip the Sharks to beat the Cowboys.
Friday night footy, Parramatta versus the Warriors. You'll see that one from CommBank Stadium. Kick-off 7:55.
Yeah, well, which Parramatta do we get? I doubt that Junior Borlo will play. I think they'll probably rest him after last night. The Warriors bounced back to form. They got back to New Zealand, thankfully, and got to win a game at home. Now they've got to come back to Australia to play against the Parramatta Eels. I don't know which Parramatta's turning up. Tell me, the big good one or the other one?
Well, if the good one turns up, they'll win.
Well, that's what we're betting on.
So,
yeah, they're a non-bet commodity at the moment.
Well, if you do want to back them, you can back them with Bluebet.
I know that, but they're a non-bet commodity at the moment. Because they're always very short in the market, and you never know who's going to turn up. I think they'll win. I think they'll beat the Warrior, but I wouldn't bet Paul Gallen's money on it. There you go.
He's got a lot of money.
He's got a lot of money.
He's going to shout out lunch today too. He doesn't know that yet.
Did he have to go and do some chores for Darren Lockyer last night after the loss?
Yeah. He had a Queensland scarf and beanie on. He had to pack the bus.
Serves him right.
That would have hurt him so much.
Serves him right. Open his big mouth.
Now, this I'm
blaming Paul Gallen for the loss.
I'll tell you who's responsible for the loss.
Yeah.
Peter Sterling.
Why is that?
Because Sterlo was at the game last night. He's been away in Italy for 7 weeks. Told me he'd watched 7 games. He's watched 2 games of football all year. Freddie invited him into the coach's box last night.
Right.
Sterlo goes and sits in the coach's box. Blues lose. Find the common denominator.
That's a bit harsh.
It's Peter Sterling.
Poor old Sterling.
I gave him a lift back to the hotel after the game. I said, you've single-handedly lost this series for New South Wales. He says, yes, I do. My job here is done. Sterlo's fault.
Gee, that's very harsh. Poor old Sterlo.
It was great to see Sterlo.
Poor old Sterlo.
Well,
he's been in Cyprus or somewhere.
He went to Italy. He was in Malta. He went to some European soccer matches.
Good on him. Yeah. He loves the EPL
Liverpool,
soccer.
yeah.
Bad Liverpool fan, but he loves the EPL soccer.
I think Liverpool played someone. Liverpool Tottenham he went to, and I think he's saying there was a draw. And look, I could be wrong. I don't follow it, but I think there was a draw that cost Liverpool the title.
Right.
Yes, he's mocked Liverpool as well. Liverpool. he's the mock. Well, let's find out what he's tipping today. And
Parramatta haven't won anything since he left either.
Sterlo, what are you doing? Roosters versus Dragons. Let's see who plays here for the Roosters. Gee, I was so disappointed in the Dragons on Sunday. Were you disappointed in the Dragons on Sunday?
No, they've got that in them, mate. They've got that in them. They've had some close wins over pretty average teams, and they have good periods and bad periods. I think they're a top 8 team, but sometimes they can throw some bottom 8 football at you. They actually beat the Roosters in the Anzac Day game earlier this year, in a very closely fought battle. I thought the Roosters got it wrong that day with their tactics. I thought Roosters attacked them the wrong way, and hopefully will have learned from that experience. Still no Luke Keary, young Walker at halfback and Manu at 5'8", which I remember at the time on Anzac Day, I think I said after the game, had Manu shifted to 5'8", I think Roosters would have beaten them on the day. I think that was what they were lacking at the time, and it was only just an opinion, but I see he's playing 5'8" today, and that
Roosters got to win. Nearly every game's must win for them now, but this is an important one because the Dragons and the Roosters are the two teams that are duelling for a place in the eight.
Yeah, but the rivalry between the two clubs is legendary, and Dragons, they beat them fair and square on Anzac Day. There's a big difference in the betting market here, and I don't think that difference is warranted, but
you can have the Dragons.
I do think Rooster wins.
You can have the Dragons.
Why can I have the Dragons?
Because I'm off them after Sunday. I thought they'd win.
You're a sore loser. You can't be like that. You've got to back up and go again.
I don't think they'll win.
If you can make a pile of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings, whatever, talking about your loss.
What does that mean?
That's what it means. If you can lose and not whinge about it and get on with it and get up and go again, punting's a big boy's game, mate. It's not for sooks.
Don't like punting. Manly versus Newcastle, 5:30, Brookvale.
Yep.
DCE, I'm assuming he's going to play.
He'll play. He'll be on a high, mate. He'll play. He'll want to get out there and do it again. Kieran Foran, he'll have his mate there to help him. Manly slowly accommodating for the loss of Turbo Tom, playing a nice brand of football.
Wonder if Ponga can play.
Well, I think he'll be on a high too.
He's had those little issues though, hasn't he? I mean, he's a different proposition backing up.
Yeah. So what happened with Gagai? Be a fine coming out of Origin, so he'll be right to play. Look, Newcastle have certainly improved. Whether they've improved enough to beat Manly at Manly is a different. I think Sea Eagle wins that one.
Titans Broncos.
Bronco coming off the back of the Origin euphoria and their great form, and I would expect their players to back up. Things are going good for the Broncos at the moment. I was actually talking to Kevy Walters last night at a function just prior to the game, and what a wonderful job he's done. He's thoroughly enjoying his time as the coach there, and got off to a rocky start, but he's persevered, and the Broncos are looking more like the Broncos club that we've known in more successful periods. So I expect them to keep winning.
How'd you go at the function? Do they embrace you up there in Brisbane these days?
Queensland?
Yeah.
They can hold a grudge, mate. Queensland.
They still off you?
Yeah.
You haven't coached for 20 years.
No, they were good. They were good. It was good.
Now, this is interesting. West Tigers have moved Brooks to halfback, have moved Dewey to 5'8", have moved Jackson Hastings to lock for the clash against the Panthers, who have none of their Origin players in.
No, and I find it extraordinary that Panthers. I know, these are still a quality side, and they've got great depth at Penrith, and these young fellas, and they all play and train together, and they've all come through the system, and they've still got, despite 8 players not out, they've still got fellas like Sorensen and Spencer Lenu on the bench.
Yeah.
So it's still a competent-looking team, but Brooks, Hastings and Dewey all in playmaker positions with Dane Laurie at fullback. There'll be a lot of creativity there. Whether they've got the defence to hold on to the Panthers remains to be seen. But that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
That's an interesting one. I mean, if Panthers are going to lose another game this year, it'll be this one. Do I think they lose this? Let me just look.
Gus is going to be
Just
secret
this.
ratings file.
Tim Sheens is going to coach the Tigers. I know about that.
You're going to coach the Bulldogs.
Gee whiz, there's not much in this game, you know. I'm going to go with the Panther, despite all the players being out. But if they're going to lose a game, I don't think they'll lose another game this year. But if they are going to lose it, it'll be this one. They're more likely to lose this than any other game this season.
Are you saying that our listeners / viewers who like having a flutter might want to have a little blue bet flutter on the Tigers? At what price?
Well, I don't know. They're $3 odd.
Ooh.
I think that's very, very good value.
Value for the weekend. All right.
Yeah, if Tigers are going to win another game and if Panthers are going to lose another game, this could be the weekend.
Okay.
Having said that,
tip the Panther.
We know the Panthers are very, very strong.
Storm Raiders, Sunday footy here on 9, 4 o'clock kickoff, Amy Park.
Well, Storm. Now, we watched them last week and we watched them the week before, conceding a lot of points and looking a little bit disorganised. Assuming Harry Grant backs up, that'll be a big boost for them. They've lost their other hooker, who's out in the sin bin for a while. Pappenhausen back, got a couple of games under his belt. The Raiders, looking through this, I cannot, for the life of me, think that Craig Bellamy will be accepting what he's seen for the last 2 weeks. I think whilst under the cover of darkness, while Origin's been on this week and been all in the headlines, I think there'll be some Melbourne players down there that have had some red ears this week. I think they'll be reading the riot act to a few of them, and I think that they'll be looking to bounce back. Cameron Munster, I assume, passes. Yep. He comes out of COVID, so he should be playing. I'm going to tip Storm.
And the Bulldogs to beat South Sydney. So who are you tipping this weekend?
Right from the top, I'm tipping Shark.
Yep.
Tipping Eel, the good Eel, if the good Eel turns up. Rooster, Sea Eagle, Bronco, Panther, Storm, Bulldog.
Thank you. Thank you for chatting. Thank you for coming back early to do our podcast, having a look back on a remarkable Origin decider.
We're working on no sleep.
None.
Zero. None.
Did you? I mean, you don't sleep at the best of times. But how did you get to sleep after coaching games like that?
No, never.
Well,
never. I don't sleep the night after commentating games.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's too much. I'm thinking about too much. But coaching, no, never sleep. Never sleep.
Yeah.
No.
I generally fall asleep all right.
I remember reading that about Wayne Bennett when he was younger in the 80s and coaching those Queensland sides. And they lost a game. It might have been the game where Mark McGaw scored that last second try. Remember down in the corner and they flashed
it. And he's up in the stand.
And I don't know whether it was a book or something I read, and he was quoted as saying that he was up walking the streets in the early hours of the morning. I thought, well, that's a bit over the top. And then I coached Origin. And I found myself walking around the streets of Penrith one night at 3 a.m, wondering what had gone wrong or what we had to do better, and there was no chance of me sleeping.
All right, that's it for 6 Tackles with Gus. Hope you enjoyed another magnificent Origin series, live free and exclusive here on 9. And the great news is, in 11 months' time, we'll be doing it all again.
Yeah.
Talk to you next week.
Long live Origin.